Why do we chase happiness and still feel empty inside? Think about it. You work harder. You make more money. You get the job, the house, the relationship you dreamed about. And then, after a few weeks, that feeling fades, and you're back to where you started, wondering why happiness always seems just one step ahead of you. This is not a personal failure. This is not weakness. This is how the human mind was built. And once you understand how it works, everything changes. Today, we're going to explore one of the most powerful books ever written about happiness. Not a self-help book full of empty promises, but a deep, scientific, beautifully honest look at what happiness actually is, where it comes from, and how you can finally stop chasing it and start living it. The book is called The Happiness Hypothesis, written by Jonathan Haidt. And I promise you, by the time we're done, you will see yourself, your mind, and your life in a completely different way. Jonathan Haidt is not your typical self-help writer. He is a social psychologist and professor at New York University's Stern School of Business. He has spent decades studying human emotions, moral psychology, and the science of well-being. He has one simple but radical goal: to take the ancient wisdom of the world's greatest thinkers and test it against the findings of modern science. What he found was extraordinary. Across thousands of years, across cultures and civilizations that never knew each other, the same truths kept appearing, and modern neuroscience and psychology kept proving them right. This book is that meeting point, where the Buddha meets the brain scan, where Plato meets psychology, where ancient philosophy meets your daily life. Let's begin. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever known exactly what you should do, but still done the opposite? You knew you should sleep early, but you stayed up until 2 a.m. scrolling. You knew you should eat healthy, but you reached for the chips anyway. You knew you should forgive someone, but the anger kept burning. You knew, and still you didn't. Why does this happen? Why are we so often at war with ourselves? Haidt begins the book with one of the most powerful and simple ideas in all of psychology. He calls it the elephant and the rider. Imagine a massive elephant, powerful, emotional, driven by instinct, desire, fear, pleasure, and pain. This elephant is your emotional mind, your unconscious, the ancient part of your brain that acts before you think. Now imagine a small rider sitting on top of that elephant. The rider can see far ahead. The rider can plan. The rider can reason and make logical decisions. This rider is your conscious mind, your rational self, the part of you that sets goals, makes resolutions, and tells itself what it should do. Here is the problem, and pay close attention, because this is one of the most important things you will ever understand about yourself. The rider thinks he is in control. He pulls the reins. He points the direction. He makes the plans. But when the elephant decides to go somewhere else, the rider cannot stop it. The elephant is 10 times stronger. The elephant moves on emotion, on habit, on gut feeling. And the rider, for all his intelligence, for all his logic, is just along for the ride, most of the time. Think about the last time you said something angry that you immediately regretted. That was the elephant moving before the rider could stop it. Think about the last time you procrastinated on something important. That was the elephant refusing to move while the rider desperately pulled the reins. Think about any bad habit you've tried to break. The elephant loves that habit. It is comfortable. It is familiar. The rider knows better, but knowing better is not enough. Now here is where it gets truly interesting. Haidt tells us that the Western world has for centuries believed that reason should control emotion, that the logical mind should dominate, that feelings are messy and untrustworthy. And so we try to control ourselves through willpower, through discipline, through sheer force of rational thought. But modern neuroscience has discovered something that would have shocked ancient philosophers. Patients who suffer damage to the emotional centers of the brain, patients who feel almost no emotion at all, do not become perfect decision makers. They become paralyzed. They cannot choose. They spend hours deciding what to have for lunch. Because without emotion to guide value and preference, the logical mind has nothing to work with. Emotion is not the enemy of reason. Emotion is the foundation of reason. The elephant is not the problem. The elephant is the engine. The key is not to fight the elephant. The key is to train it. So how do you train your elephant? 3 powerful ways. Meditation, which over time rewires how your brain responds to stress and emotion. Cognitive therapy, which teaches you to notice when your thoughts are distorted and gently correct them. And Prozac, or more broadly, the understanding that sometimes biology is the barrier, and there is no shame in addressing it directly. But beyond all 3 of these, Haidt offers something even simpler: understanding. Once you understand that the elephant and the rider both exist in you, once you stop seeing yourself as purely rational or purely emotional, you can work with both parts of yourself instead of against them. That understanding alone begins to change everything. Most people don't realize this, but the way you feel right now, your mood, your outlook, your sense that life is good or terrible, is not a response to reality. It is a response to your interpretation of reality. 2 people can sit in the same traffic jam. One is furious, certain the world is against him, certain his day is ruined. The other listens to music, thinks through a problem, and arrives at work almost refreshed. Same traffic, completely different experience. What changed? The story they told themselves about the traffic. Haidt explores what the ancient Stoic philosophers knew 2,000 years ago. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the greatest teachers of human resilience, said it plainly: men are disturbed not by the things which happen, but by the opinions about the things. And now modern psychology, through the work of cognitive behavioral therapy, has proven this in clinical detail. Our thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings create our behavior. And so if you want to change how you feel and how you act, you must begin with how you think. But here is the deeper problem. The elephant doesn't just feel. The elephant interprets. And the elephant has powerful built-in biases. Haidt identifies what he calls the negativity bias. Our brains are wired to pay more attention to threats, losses, and bad events than to positive ones. But because for millions of years, the ancestors who survived were the ones who were constantly watching for danger. The ones who relaxed too much didn't survive to become your ancestors. This negativity bias means that bad events hit us roughly twice as hard as good events of equal size. Losing $20 feels worse than finding $20 feels good. A single harsh criticism from a stranger can ruin a day filled with compliments. One bad memory can overshadow dozens of good ones. And so the writer, if he is wise, learns to work around this bias. Not to deny it, not to pretend it isn't there, but to consciously, deliberately redirect attention toward the good, toward gratitude, toward what is working. This is not toxic positivity. This is intelligent rewiring. This is training the elephant to see more of the full picture. There is another bias Haidt discusses that may shock you when you recognize it in yourself. It is called the self-serving bias, the tendency to take credit for our successes and blame others for our failures. When things go well, we say, "I worked hard. I was smart. I made good decisions." When things go badly, we say, "The system was unfair. They didn't give me a chance. It wasn't my fault." And here is the painful truth about this bias. It feels completely justified. It feels like honest self-assessment. The elephant is very good at constructing convincing stories. Haidt says we are all like lawyers who first decide on a verdict, usually one that makes us look good, and then work backwards to find evidence to support it. We are not as rational as we think. We are rationalizing. Recognizing this in yourself is uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Because once you see the bias, you can begin to question the stories your elephant tells. You can start asking, am I seeing this clearly? Or am I just seeing what feels comfortable? Human beings did not evolve to live alone. We evolved in small tribes, deeply connected to each other, dependent on each other for survival, and our psychology reflects that completely. One of the most fundamental forces in human social life is reciprocity. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. You help me, I help you. You hurt me, I will find a way to hurt you back. This is wired so deeply into us that it operates almost automatically, below the level of conscious thought. The elephant understands reciprocity perfectly. Haidt explores how this ancient reciprocity system shapes almost everything in human life: politics, business, friendships, family, romance. The moment someone does something nice for you, even something small, you feel a pull toward them. You want to help them back. And the moment someone wrongs you, even slightly, the elephant remembers, and it waits. Now here is where it gets really interesting, because reciprocity can be used for good or for bad. The most successful people in life, in both business and relationships, are those who understand how to be genuinely generous, not in a calculating, transactional way, but in a warm, authentic way that creates goodwill and trust everywhere they go. Haidt quotes the work of the anthropologist Robert Trivers and explains how reciprocal altruism, the act of being generous to others with the expectation that, over time, it will return to you, is one of the most powerful engines of human cooperation. It is why strangers help each other in disasters. It is why communities function. It is why random acts of kindness make both the giver and the receiver feel better. But reciprocity has a dark side too. When we feel wronged, the desire for revenge is powerful and automatic. The elephant wants justice. And sometimes the elephant confuses revenge with justice. Haidt explores how this impulse, the desire to punish those who harm us, even at a cost to ourselves, is deeply human. In experiments, people will pay real money just to punish a stranger who was unfair to them in a game, even when they'll never meet that stranger again, even when there's nothing to gain. The elephant demands that wrongs be righted. And this is where the righter must step in with wisdom, not to suppress the sense of injustice, but to ask, is holding on to this serving me? Is seeking revenge making my life better? Or is the elephant burning my own house down in order to punish my neighbor? Because often, the greatest act of power is not revenge. It is release. Let me paint you a picture. Two friends have an argument. Each one, afterward, is absolutely certain they were right. Each one tells the story of what happened, and in each version, they are reasonable and the other person was unreasonable. Each one truly believes their version. Neither one is lying, and yet they cannot both be right. So what is happening? Haidt introduces the concept of the hypocrite within. We are all incredibly good at noticing the faults and biases of other people. We can see their selfishness, their irrationality, their blind spots, with stunning clarity. But when it comes to our own faults and biases, we are almost completely blind. Jesus said it beautifully. Why do you see the speck in your brother's eye, but fail to notice the log in your own eye? This is not just poetic. This is neurologically accurate. The part of the brain that processes self-reflection and the part that processes social judgment are different. And the self-reflection part is heavily biased towards self-protection. The elephant does not want to see its own flaws. Flaws are threats. So the elephant hides them, rationalizes them, or projects them onto others. Haidt calls this the moral judgment system, and he makes a point that should change how you see every argument you've ever had. In any conflict, whether between individuals, groups, or nations, every side believes with absolute sincerity that they are right and the other is wrong. Every side has a moral story. Every side has evidence. And every side is partially blind to their own contribution to the problem. This does not mean that all sides are equal. It does not mean that truth doesn't exist. It means that human beings are incredibly poor judges of themselves, and incredibly quick to judge others. And if we understood this, really understood it, it would make us slower to condemn, slower to rage, and much more capable of actual resolution. There is a practice that flows naturally from this understanding. It is called the taking of another perspective. Before judging someone, ask, what story is the world telling from their eyes? What did they experience that made this action make sense to them? This is not making excuses for bad behavior. This is the beginning of wisdom. This is what makes great leaders, great therapists, great friends, and great human beings. Here is the question at the heart of this book. Can happiness be found? And if so, where? Haidt examines what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. And once you understand this concept, you will never see ambition and desire the same way again. The hedonic treadmill works like this. You want something, a new job, a new house, more money, a relationship, and you genuinely believe that getting it will make you lastingly happy. So you work for it, you struggle for it, you sacrifice for it, and then you get it. And for a while, it is wonderful. And then, slowly, it becomes normal. The excitement fades. The novelty disappears, and you look up and find yourself wanting the next thing. Always the next thing. Studies of lottery winners show this with haunting clarity. 1 year after winning a lottery, the emotional level of winners was nearly identical to where it had been before they won. And studies of people who become paralyzed from accidents show something equally profound. 1 year later, their average daily happiness was nearly identical to that of people who had never been in accidents. We adapt. We always adapt. This is called hedonic adaptation, and it is one of the cruelest tricks our psychology plays on us. We are wired to return to our baseline level of happiness no matter what happens. Good things happen, we rise, then return. Bad things happen, we fall, then return. The treadmill keeps moving, and we keep running, getting nowhere. But here's the thing, and this is critical. The treadmill does not move at the same speed for all experiences. Some things do produce lasting changes in well-being, and understanding which things do and which things don't is one of the most practically important lessons in this entire book. Things that do not produce lasting happiness. More money beyond a comfortable baseline, a bigger house, a fancier car, more status symbols, physical appearance improvements, fame. We adapt to all of these. Quickly. Completely. Things that do produce lasting happiness. The quality of your relationships, meaningful work, personal growth, connection to something larger than yourself, gratitude, flow. That state of complete absorption in a challenging task and giving to others. The research is clear, and it is humbling, because most of us spend most of our time and energy chasing the things that don't deliver lasting happiness, while neglecting the things that do. We are running on the wrong treadmill. Of all the things that make human life worth living, relationships are the most powerful. Not money, not status, not achievement. Relationships. Haidt explores attachment theory, the scientific study of how our earliest bonds with caregivers shape every relationship we have for the rest of our lives. As infants, we form deep emotional attachments to our primary caregivers. And those early experiences create internal templates, unconscious models of how relationships work, how safe or unsafe they are, how trustworthy or untrustworthy other people are. If you had caregivers who were reliably warm and responsive, you likely developed what psychologists call a secure attachment style. You trust people. You feel comfortable with closeness. You can love without constantly fearing abandonment. If your early caregivers were inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes cold, sometimes there, sometimes gone, you may have developed an anxious attachment style. You want closeness desperately, but you are terrified of being abandoned. You cling. You worry. You interpret neutral signals as threats. And if your caregivers were distant or dismissive, if emotional need was not met or was even punished, you may have developed an avoidant attachment style. You protect yourself by not needing, by keeping distance, by telling yourself you don't care, even when you do. Most people don't realize that these patterns, formed in the first years of life, when we had no choice and no understanding, continue to operate invisibly in our adult relationships. The anxious partner who constantly seeks reassurance. The avoidant partner who withdraws when things get too close. The way fights escalate beyond all proportion because both people's elephants are responding not just to what just happened, but to every wound and fear they've ever carried. But here is the hope. Attachment patterns are not destiny. They can change. Secure relationships in adulthood, with a loving partner, a therapist, a mentor, a deep friend, can gradually rewire the elephant, can create new templates, new models of safety and trust. Healing is possible. Not easy, not fast, but genuinely possible. Haidt also explores the nature of romantic love itself, and what he finds is both beautiful and slightly sobering. The passionate intensity of early romantic love, the obsessive thinking, the euphoria, the sense that this person completes you, is driven largely by dopamine and other neurochemicals. It is real, but it is temporary. By design, it typically fades within 2 years. What replaces it, if the relationship is healthy, is companionate love. Quieter, deeper, more stable, less like fireworks and more like a steady warm light. And the research shows that couples who successfully transition from passionate love to companionate love, who build real friendship and trust, report some of the highest levels of happiness in any human population. The tragedy is that many people, when the passionate phase fades, assume the love is gone. They leave. They chase the dopamine rush with someone new. And the cycle repeats. The elephant chases the excitement. The writer never realizes that what they were looking for was right there, waiting on the other side of the passion. Now this next idea may be the most counterintuitive thing in the entire book. And if you let it sink in, it will change how you see every difficult thing that has ever happened to you. Haidt asks, can suffering make you stronger? Not just in the cliché motivational poster sense, but genuinely, deeply, scientifically, can going through terrible things actually make you a better, wiser, happier person? The answer, remarkably, is yes, under certain conditions. The concept is called post-traumatic growth, and it is the finding that a significant percentage of people who go through serious trauma, illness, loss, accident, war, or abuse come out the other side with something they didn't have before. A deeper sense of what matters, stronger relationships, greater compassion, a clearer identity, a sense of resilience they didn't know they had, not despite the suffering, in some crucial way because of it. Haidt is careful here. He is not romanticizing suffering. He is not saying that trauma is good. Trauma is terrible, and not everyone grows from it. Some people are crushed. Some people are scarred in ways that take a lifetime to heal. The trauma itself is never the gift. But the struggle through the trauma, the wrestling, the questioning, the being forced to rebuild, that process, when it happens in the right conditions with support and reflection, can crack open things inside us that we didn't know were closed, can reveal strengths we didn't know we had, can teach lessons that comfortable, easy, pleasant lives almost never teach. Think about the people in your life who you find truly wise. Not just intelligent, not just educated, but genuinely wise, in the way that makes you feel understood and held when you talk to them. In almost every case, that wisdom was forged in difficulty, in loss, in failure, in the dark places they had to find their way through. Haidt invokes the ancient metaphor of the forge. Iron becomes steel only under enormous heat and pressure. A diamond is coal that refused to give up under pressure. A lotus flower grows not in clear water but in mud. Across every culture, every tradition, every wisdom tradition in human history, the same truth appears. Depth comes from difficulty. Meaning often comes from struggle. Character is forged, not given. And so if you are going through something difficult right now, if you are in the middle of a loss, a failure, a heartbreak, a health challenge, I am not going to tell you it's a blessing in disguise. Pain is not a disguise. It is real and it hurts. But I will tell you this. The research is clear. How you relate to your difficulty determines whether it grows you or diminishes you. Those who find meaning in their suffering, who ask not just why did this happen but what can this teach me, what can I build from this, they are the ones who grow. And that question, that act of finding meaning, is something the writer can choose, even when the elephant is in agony. Haidt, being a scientist, actually proposes a formula for happiness. And before you roll your eyes at the idea of putting something as complex as happiness into a formula, hear him out, because this formula is surprisingly powerful. H equals S plus C plus V. H is your level of happiness. S is your biological set point, the baseline level of happiness that you tend to return to, which is partly determined by your genes and your basic temperament. C is the conditions of your life, your relationships, your safety, your health, your sense of meaning and community. And V is the voluntary activities you choose, how you spend your time, the habits you build, the practices you maintain. Research suggests that roughly 50% of your happiness set point is genetic. This is sobering but not hopeless. It means that some people naturally have sunnier, more resilient temperaments, and some do not. And no amount of achieving or acquiring will move that set point very much. The treadmill brings you back. About 10% comes from the conditions of your life. This surprises most people. because we assume that changing our circumstances, getting the better job, the bigger house, the nicer neighborhood, will dramatically change our happiness. But because of hedonic adaptation, we adjust to new conditions quickly. The conditions matter most in their extremes. Chronic noise, a terrible commute, an abusive relationship, severe poverty, these do genuinely reduce happiness and they matter. But beyond basic thresholds of safety and comfort, more conditions don't buy more happiness. The remaining 40% comes from voluntary activities, from what you choose to do every day. And this is where your real power lies. Here is why voluntary activities are so powerful. Because of something called flow. Psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi spent decades studying the conditions under which people feel most alive and engaged. And what he found was that the peak human experiences, the moments people describe as the best of their lives, are almost never moments of passive consumption. They are moments of complete, absorbed engagement in a challenging activity. The musician lost in the music. The athlete in the zone. The programmer solving a complex problem. The parent in a deep, joyful game with their child. In these moments of flow, self-consciousness disappears. Time distorts. The gap between the self and the activity vanishes. And people report extraordinary feelings of aliveness and meaning. Not because anything was achieved, but because they were fully, completely there. Voluntary activities that build lasting happiness include cultivating relationships, acts of service and generosity, spiritual practice or meditation, engagement with meaningful work, regular exercise, and the deliberate cultivation of gratitude. These activities, practiced consistently, can actually shift your set point over time. They train the elephant. They build new neural pathways. They create a life that generates happiness from the inside rather than waiting for the outside to deliver it. Haidt is a social scientist, not a theologian, and yet he spends significant time in this book exploring what he calls elevation, the emotion you feel when you witness a deeply moral or beautiful act. A stranger helping a stranger in a moment of need. A soldier sacrificing himself for his comrades. The parent giving everything for a child. A musician playing something that stops the world. When we witness these things, something opens in us. A physical sensation in the chest. A lifting feeling. A rush of love for humanity. A desire to be better, to do better, to reach for something larger than ourselves. This is elevation. And it is one of the most distinctly human emotions we have. Haidt argues that this emotion, along with awe, wonder, and the sense of the sacred, points to a deep human need that purely material, purely rational approaches to life leave unfulfilled. We are not just creatures who want comfort and pleasure and status. We are creatures who crave meaning, transcendence, the feeling that we are part of something larger than ourselves. This is why religion, across every culture in human history, has been one of the most universal human experiences. Not because supernatural claims are necessarily true, but because the human need for community, ritual, meaning, and transcendence is real and deep and powerful. And those who have it, who belong to a community larger than themselves, who feel their life has cosmic significance, consistently report higher levels of well-being and resilience than those who don't. You don't have to be religious to access this, but you do have to be connected to something larger than your own ego and your own desires. Service, nature, community, science in its highest form. All of these can provide the sense of meaning and elevation that the human soul requires. The ancient Greeks, particularly Aristotle, believed that virtue was not separate from happiness. That virtue was the path to happiness. that the good life and the happy life were, at their deepest level, the same life. Modern psychology is increasingly agreeing with him. Haidt explores positive psychology, the scientific study not just of what goes wrong with human minds, but of what goes right, of what makes people not just function but genuinely flourish. And what the research reveals is striking. People who are honest, who are generous, who are kind, who have integrity in their daily actions, they are not sacrificing happiness for virtue. They are building happiness through virtue. Aristotle called this eudaimonia, usually translated as happiness but more precisely meaning flourishing, thriving, living fully as a human being. And Aristotle taught that eudaimonia came not from pleasure but from the consistent exercise of virtue, courage, justice, wisdom, temperance, in the service of a meaningful life. Here is the key insight. Virtue, in this sense, is not a performance. It is not about appearing good to others. It is about training the elephant to genuinely be good, to have your character aligned with your values, to close the gap between who you are and who you want to be. And when that gap closes, when your actions flow naturally from your values without constant internal conflict, there is a sense of wholeness and peace that is itself a form of deep happiness. Haidt explores specific virtues that research connects to well-being. Gratitude, the practice of actively noticing and appreciating what is good in your life. Forgiveness, not for the sake of the person who wronged you, but for your own liberation from the weight of resentment. Humility, the willingness to see yourself clearly, with neither false pride nor false shame. And compassion, which research shows benefits the giver as much as the receiver. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, wrote one of the most powerful books of the 20th century, Man's Search for Meaning, and his central insight, formed in the most extreme conditions imaginable, was this: human beings can endure almost any suffering if they have a why, a reason, a purpose that gives their pain meaning. Haidt builds on this insight with modern psychology. He argues that meaning, the sense that your life matters, that what you do connects to something larger and more enduring than yourself, is not a luxury. It is a fundamental human need, as basic as food and shelter. And people who lack it, who live what they feel is a purposeless, disconnected life, suffer in ways that no amount of comfort or entertainment can relieve. Where does meaning come from? Research points to several sources. Meaningful work, not just financially rewarding work, but work that you feel matters, that uses your best abilities, that connects you to others and contributes to something beyond yourself. Deep relationships, the experience of being truly known and truly loved. Belonging to a community or tradition larger than yourself. And growth, the ongoing sense that you are becoming more, understanding more, contributing more than you were before. Haidt makes a beautiful distinction between the happiness of a pleasant life and the happiness of a meaningful life. A pleasant life is one filled with positive emotions, comfort, and enjoyment. A meaningful life is one that feels significant, purposeful, and connected. They are not opposites. The best life contains both. But if you had to choose, if the chips were down, the meaningful life, even with its struggles and sacrifices, is consistently reported as more deeply satisfying than the merely pleasant one. We have traveled a long way together, through the divided self, through the myths of happiness, through love and loss and adversity and growth, through virtue and meaning and transcendence. And now Haidt brings it all together in what I think is the most beautiful and honest conclusion of any book I have ever encountered on this subject. He says this, and I want you to hear this clearly. Happiness is not something you find. It is something you build. It is not a destination at the end of a long journey. It is the quality of attention and intention you bring to the journey itself. Ancient wisdom and modern psychology have been pointing to the same truth for thousands of years. And that truth is this: we are social creatures who need deep connection. We are meaning-making creatures who need purpose. We are growing creatures who need challenge and struggle. We are embodied creatures who need to move, to create, to be fully present in the physical world. And we are moral creatures who need to live in alignment with our deepest values. When these needs are met, not perfectly, not all at once, but genuinely and consistently, we flourish. Not because we have everything we want, but because we are living as we were made to live. The happiness hypothesis is not that happiness is easy. It is not that happiness is guaranteed. It is that happiness is available to you. Not after the promotion, not after the relationship, not after the body or the bank account or the achievement. With what you have, in the life you are living. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because you understand them more clearly, because you see the elephant and the rider, and you know how to work with both. Because you know that relationships matter more than achievements. Because you know that struggle can grow you. Because you know that virtue is not sacrifice but the deepest form of self-interest. Because you know that meaning is not found but built, one moment, one choice, one act of genuine connection at a time. Haidt ends by offering what he believes is the one central insight that all the ancient wisdom traditions and all the modern research agree on. A truth so simple that it is easy to miss. So deep that it takes a lifetime to fully live. Happiness comes from between, not from within as modern self-help so often insists. Not from without as the advertising industry insists. But from between, from the quality of your relationships, from the fit between your work and your values, from your connection to something larger than yourself, from the dynamic, living, breathing space between you and the world. You are not alone in this. You were never meant to be. The happiness you are looking for is already in motion, already taking shape, in every honest conversation, in every act of kindness, in every moment of genuine presence, in every time you choose meaning over distraction and connection over comfort. This is the happiness hypothesis, and it has been waiting for you all along. If this book and this script has moved something in you, I hope you will sit with it, not just today, but in the days ahead. Come back to the elephant and the rider the next time you feel at war with yourself. Come back to the happiness formula the next time you find yourself chasing something external. Come back to the idea of meaning when life feels empty. Come back to reciprocity when relationships feel hard. And if you're ready to go deeper, pick up Jonathan Haidt's The Happiness Hypothesis. It is one of the most generous, honest, and beautifully written books on the human condition that exists. Every page will leave you with something to think about, something to feel, and something to do. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of your elephant, trust your rider, and live from the middle, where all the real happiness lives.